All right, let's dive in. Today, we're looking at what you could call a blueprint, not for a house, but for a nation's very soul. We're unpacking Numbers chapter 15, a powerful set of instructions given to a people standing on the brink of a totally new life. But first, think about this for a second. How do you make something, a rule, a memory, a promise, truly last? How do you weave it into the very fabric of a culture? Well, Numbers 15 is God's answer to that exact question. It's a roadmap for how to live a life that never forgets the promise maker. So let's get the setting right. We start with verse 1. The Lord speaks directly to Moses. Just picture that for a moment. The voice of the universe focused on this one leader in the middle of this vast, empty desert. Then in verse 2, God gives the command, speak to the Israelites and say to them, and you can just feel the anticipation build. They're looking out towards this new land, and God says, when you finally enter the land I am giving you as a home, this is how you're going to live. This is so much more than a rule book. It's the DNA for a whole new way of being. Okay, so the first part of this blueprint, it's all about worship. And not just going through the motions. No, this is about creating an experience that engages every single sense, something God calls a pleasing aroma. And this is where things get really specific. Verse 3 sets the stage. Whenever you make an offering by fire, you're not just bringing the animal. There's a whole recipe. For a lamb, verse 4 tells you to bring about 1/10 of an ephah of the finest flour, and you're going to mix it with 1/4 hin of rich, pressed olive oil. Then, verse 5 adds the drink offering, 1/4 hin of wine. You can almost hear the sizzle, smell that sweet, smoky scent of grain and wine rising from the altar. Now, if you bring a ram, verse 6 says you up the quantities. 2/10 of an ephah of flour, 1/3 of a hin of oil. And you guessed it, verse 7 calls for 1/3 of a hin of wine. It's a richer, fuller expression. And for a bull, verse 8 says you prepare it as a burnt offering. Verse 9 gives the measure, 3/10 of an ephah of flour, 1/2 a hin of oil. And finally, verse 10 calls for 1/2 a hin of wine to go with it. See? This is a feast for the senses. And verses 11 through 13 just lock it all in. This is the standard procedure, a consistent, beautiful way to show devotion. And right here, this is huge. The blueprint reveals something absolutely radical for its time. Verse 14 kicks it off with a what-if scenario. What if a foreigner living among you wants to present an offering? What then? Well, verse 15 drops the bombshell. The community is to have the same rules for you and for the foreigner residing among you. Just picture that. An Israelite and someone from a completely different background standing shoulder to shoulder, walking the exact same path to God. And just to make sure nobody misses it, verse 16 says it again. The same law and the same regulations will apply to both you and the foreigner residing among you. No VIP section, no special rules. One law for everyone. Okay, so the blueprint moves from the main altar right into your kitchen. In verses 17 and 18, God tells Moses to get ready to give this next instruction when they get into the land. Verse 19 says, when you eat the food of the land, present a portion as an offering to the Lord. Then verse 20 gets beautifully specific. Imagine this. You've just had your very first harvest in the new land. You grind the first grain, you knead the first batch of dough. From that very first loaf, you are to take a piece, form it into a cake, and lift it up as an offering. And verse 21 makes this a tradition that lasts forever. It's like with every first bite, you're saying, thank you. We remember that this land, this food, this entire life is a gift from you. So the blueprint is pretty clear, but let's be real. What happens when we mess up? What about when rules get broken by accident? Well, the great thing is, the blueprint actually has a plan for that too. So verse 22 starts with this scenario. Now, what if you as a community unintentionally fail to carry out one of these commands? And verse 23 clarifies that this means any command God gave through Moses. Okay, so what do? Verse 24 provides the way back. If the whole community messed up without realizing it, they are to bring a young bull and a male goat. Then, in verse 25, you see the priest stepping forward to make atonement for everyone. And then comes this incredible promise in verse 26, they will be forgiven. Because you know what? It was a mistake. But what if it isn't the whole community? What if it's just one person? Verse 27 makes it personal. But if just one person sins unintentionally, you can just picture that individual, can't you, carrying the weight of that mistake? Well, verse 28 gives them a concrete action to take. The priest makes atonement for them right there before the Lord, and they will be forgiven. There's a path back. And then, verse 29 drives home that incredible point from before. One and the same law applies to everyone who sins unintentionally, whether a native-born Israelite or a foreigner. Okay, take a breath, because the tone of this chapter is about to shift dramatically. We've talked about accidents. Now we have to talk about choices. What happens when a line isn't just stumbled over, but deliberately crossed? Verse 30 introduces a whole different kind of sin. It's sometimes translated as sinning with a high hand, like shaking your fist at heaven. This isn't an oops. This is defiance. It's looking God's rule square in the eye and choosing to break it. And verse 31 explains exactly why this is so serious. It's because that person has despised the Lord's word and broken his command. And the consequence? It's severe. That person is to be completely cut off from the community, and their guilt remains on them. Now, this isn't just some abstract theological idea. The Bible immediately gives us a case study, a real, raw story that shows us exactly what this looks like in the real world. And that brings us to verse 32. Listen to how it's worded. While the Israelites were in the wilderness, a man was found gathering wood on the Sabbath day. Let's just paint that picture from verse 32. The whole camp is at rest. It is quiet. It's the Sabbath, a day God set apart. And then, a sound cuts through that holy silence, the sharp snap of a dry stick being broken. This man is working. He knows the command, and he's choosing to break it right there, in front of everyone. So in verse 33, the people who saw him immediately grab him and bring him to Moses and Aaron and the whole assembly. And there's this pause, this moment of, what now? Verse 34 says, they put him in custody because it wasn't yet clear what should be done to him. Can you feel that tension? The whole community just waiting. Then, in verse 35, the verdict comes straight from God to Moses. The man must be put to death. The entire assembly must stone him outside the camp. And verse 36 shows what happens next. The community takes him outside the camp, and they carry out the sentence, just as the Lord commanded. It's a shocking, severe moment, and it's designed to be an unforgettable lesson about the seriousness of deliberate defiance. Wow, I mean, that's heavy. And you'd think the chapter might end there, but it doesn't. Instead, after that incredibly hard lesson, God provides something beautiful and creative. A tool, really, designed to help prevent this from ever happening again. Here it is in verse 38. God gives them this simple, brilliant instruction. Make tassels on the corners of your clothes, and on each tassel, weave in a single thread of blue. Just imagine that. A little flash of sky blue, the color of the heavens, woven right into the clothes you wear every single day. But why? What's the point? Verse 39 explains it perfectly. This tassel is meant to be a physical reminder. You will have these tassels to look at, and so you will remember all the commands of the Lord, that you may obey them. It's a tool to stop you from prostituting yourselves by chasing after the lusts of your own hearts and eyes. And verse 40 gives the ultimate goal. Then you will remember to obey all my commands and will be consecrated to your God. It's like a little alarm system woven right into your life, constantly prompting you, remember, and be holy. And the whole blueprint, all of it, from the offerings to the punishments to the tassels, it's all sealed with this final, powerful declaration in verse 41. This is the why behind everything. Why remember? Why obey? I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt to be your God. I am the Lord your God. It all comes back to relationship. The rules aren't just random. They are the very framework for a life lived with the God who saves.